Hi folks, I'm Lawrence Man, this is LAWRENCEcanDRAW, and today we are going to be retouching or reworking a 100-year-old photograph. You may have seen in my latest video that we're giving away a Drobo 5D free gold edition. And yeah, that's pretty cool. In the video for that, I showed a 2 to 3 minute version of this. And yeah, that flew by pretty quickly where we reworked this image. And where that is really, really cool, I wanted to spend some time now and actually show this reworking in detail. Now, the original image was very degraded. In fact, it was only pure black and white. There was no grey in this image at all, no gradients, nothing. So I thought I'd break this down and show it to you in detail. It took 5 hours originally. This is going to be 2 hours, so it's still very long, still very detailed, but you should have some fun. If you want to speed it up, you can hit the little gear icon if you're watching this in YouTube and speed it up a bit, and listen to me with a nice high-pitched chirpy voice, or, press play on some music. But it will give you the ability to watch it a little more in depth. Remember to go and enter the Drobo competition that is going on at the moment as well. And that's pretty cool. So let's crack on. All I've done so far is added on a few grey layers and just started working this up. Like I say, the photograph that was provided to me, this is the Sheriff of Cache County from roughly 100 years ago. The image was purely black and white. There were no tonal values to this image at all. So I've started adding a shadow down one side of the face, added some greys on in the background, and yeah, the image is very blurry. This image was photocopied from a newspaper and provided to me via email as a JPEG. Now, the edges are all very blurry. There's dot matrix pixelation. Now, that's obviously because it was photographed from a newspaper, and it wasn't, believe me, this obviously wasn't a full page photograph in the paper. So, yeah, all of the edges are blurry. And the first thing I'm going to do after adding a small amount of grayscale toning is go around the edges and just sharpen them all up with my brush. The brushes I'm using here are just the standard Photoshop brushes, and that's what I'm using here. I'm using Photoshop and I'm using a Wacom Cintiq 27QHD Touch, and it's all going straight forwards. The edges that I can see clearest here are the hair, the mustache, and the jacket. His eyes are very, very hard to make out. I can see some pupils. I can't really see any eyebrows, but I'm gonna need to put those in fairly early on, but I'm gonna need to leave them a while before I can get any real detail work in. First things first, I need to work out who this gentleman is and really get to grips with his character and what he looks like. Remember though that while I have to illustrate this, it's not a simple matter of retouching. I have to make this look as historically accurate as possible. And I really want to imagine is the wrong word. I do have to use my imagination, but I have to draw out from what is in the photograph. So this isn't retouching, but it's not illustration. It's not fantasy. This isn't me just drawing what I want to from my imagination. It's a mix of the two. I'm trying to stay as faithful as I can to the image. Now, if I was a photo retoucher, I would be using photography elements. You know, I would go and grab a bundle of photographs and patching them together to do this. I'm not doing that because I'm an illustrator, and I can create an image in the end, as you will see, that is as close to a photograph as we can possibly get. For most people, you'll be able to see that it's not a photograph, but it'll be so close that hopefully, you won't be able to tell too much. And I think the payoff is that it will look more like the original gentleman, the original sheriff, than a patchwork of photographs would have done. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below about that. Let me know what you think. Does this look like the gentleman from the original photograph as well? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And, just generally how this turns out. So already I'm starting to add in more depth as well. There are plenty of areas here where it's supposed to be black, it's supposed to be darker, but obviously time has worn on with the photograph and started to bleach out and just wear down the tonal values. So some areas where I do want it to be solid black have now turned into this bitty greyness. So yeah, I'm going to bring back some of the stark contrast, and that's quite an easy fix. But I'm having to make a lot of decisions as to what I want that to be. You'll notice shading on his face. He's very white at the moment, very ghost-like, but yeah, we'll correct that very shortly. But I just want to get these overall sharp details, get the crisp lighting that I can see, the detailing there done, and the detailing on his face, for instance, those tonal values, we don't know what they are. We can't see them. So we're just going to concentrate on the things that we know, the things that we can see before moving on. Now, if you look in the background, you can see my other monitor there, and you can see that I have photographs up from the same period of other gentlemen. Now, they are really, really useful. The client sent some of those across. I've also got other reference images up that I've found myself. They are from the same time period of gentlemen with, similar mustaches, similar hairstyles, and they are invaluable. They just let me work out, how this sheriff's mustache should look, how his hairstyle should look. Also, the lighting for the image, how degraded the photo should be once I've finished it, because I still want it to have a certain look of degradation. It is 100 years old. After all, I just don't want it to be as bad as it was. So, we are going to have skin texture on it. At the moment, I'm only using Photoshop's standard brush, but I will use a couple of other brushes as well. So yeah, all in all, just continuing to work on the lines that we can see. But here I am working on that initial level of shading. But this all comes out of the fact that the image does throw us certain bones in certain places. If you're wondering what the panels are there to the right of the screen that don't look exactly like Photoshop, the color palettes there, they are Anastasiy palettes for picking colors, etc. I'll put a link in the description to those, and they're absolutely great. I've started using those recently, and they just help you with picking your colors, tones, and mixing them, etc. And that makes it a lot easier to work in Photoshop. You can go and grab those in the link in the description, like I say. As for brushes, you can do this pretty much all with just Photoshop standard brushes. For most of my work, for most of my tutorials, etc., I pretty much just do it all with Photoshop standard brushes or Painter standard brushes. I pretty much, I'm not one of these guys who uses flashy made-up brushes other than, just to do the odd bit here and there. All I use in this is the standard brush, a brush for just a skin texture, and that's a brush I've used for years. And then the other brush I use is just something for a bit of light degradation, and that is just right at the end, and that you could do with a standard brush as well. It's just to speed things up. The degradation brush, you could make up one of those of your own, and the skin tone one, well, you could do that as well with your own. Both of those you could do just by taking photographs and of skin and of something that was a bit beaten up, and following my tutorial on how to make a brush. So there you go. Or you could just go and see if there are these brushes already lying around and just download them somewhere. Easy enough to do. But I mean, you never know. I might give out those brushes too. Let me know in the comments below if you want those. However, this is now starting to come along. Those eyes are actually looking good, and I'm happy with those, and they look like the sheriff in the original photo, which I was a bit worried about. I was a bit worried about his eyebrows because he felt like he didn't have any. I was worried about his hair and the fact that it felt a bit uneven, a bit unsymmetrical, but it feels like it's coming along. The mustache is the part where I felt it was the easiest piece to draw out, the most well defined. But I think that it's gonna have to take more work. The shading that I am getting in though is definitely coming along quite nicely, and I think a lot of that is owed to the fact that I have on my other monitor those reference images from the same time period and the same style in kind of hair and mustaches and things like that. They're all slightly different, but they all give me a lot to work with, and they're all degraded photographs. Now, some of them are degraded a lot more, and some of them are still very good photographs with skin texture and so on and so forth. None of them were degraded as badly as the one I started with, but they're degraded as much as I want to make this one in the final image. So that's really good. It gives me a lot of reference to play with, and I can take a lot of inspiration from those while making sure that this image stays historically accurate to how this gentleman looked, or at least how I feel this gentleman looked. And this image has already been completed, obviously, and the client's seen this and signed it off, and they're very happy with this, and they say that the sheriff looked exactly, this is how they feel he looked as well. So everybody's happy. Let me know in the comments below if you think, yeah, this is historically accurate. One thing you'll notice is that I'm not zooming into the image, and I'm not rotating it, I'm not moving it around. Now, normally I do that, and I do that a lot. I try not to do it when I'm doing a YouTube video or when I'm working on a tutorial, but I still do it. I still do it. The reason I'm not doing it on this is because I'm really trying to maintain that image of who he is. I'm really trying to keep this image as still in my mind of who he is, and keep that image in place. I don't want to lose sight of it. I don't want to focus in on any particular detail. I want to keep the overall image of his face in sight. And if I zoom in on any detail, I'll lose focus of the overall. So I'm not going to zoom in, I'm not going to rotate it. This isn't about what his mustache looks like. This is about what he looks like with a mustache. So if I zoom in at all on his mustache, it will be much later on in the process. And that works. But for right now, I need to focus on what he looks like with a mustache, and that's why you won't see me zooming in. And hopefully that makes sense to you. But I love to rotate. I love to use hand gestures on my tablet with the touch. I love to use the hotkeys, and the express keys and rotate that way. You know, I love to use Photoshop's rotate function as well. There are many ways to do this. There are many ways to pinch and zoom, etc., etc. But when I'm working on something like this and I have to have it look like that exact person, sometimes you're better off just keeping the image in exactly one place, even if it means turning off that touch function and saying, hey, let's keep this right there. It's one reason why I always have that navigator window open. I know a lot of people turn that off. I like that navigator window open in the top upper right, just so I always have a thumbnail picture there. And I can see them nice and small and say, hey, look, you know, that's there. And I've always got that. But having this image large to work on, always in the same place, that works brilliantly for me. I did consider turning my drawing tablet on, you know, I've got it on the Ergotron arm. I considered turning it portrait mode and having that there. But just with the extra palettes that I'm using at the moment, just with those Anastasiy palettes, I thought, no, I'll just keep it landscape, especially if I do need to zoom in, you know, later on. So I thought, hey, you can see now that I'm still refining, and this time I'm refining with white rather than with black. And that's helped me because I've just gone in on the eyes and redone that, but I'm now starting to do this collar. Now, on the original image, he had some kind of tie, but I couldn't really see what it was. So I've actually made a creative decision here, and I'm going to draw his tie in with black. I'm not too sure whether he just wasn't wearing a tie in the original photograph, whether he was wearing a white tie, which would have been a little strange. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what was going on, but there wasn't enough detail in the original image to be able to tell. So I just added the black tie, or the darker tone of tie. It's not exactly black; it's more of a dark grey, and that seemed to feel correct, and it definitely suited more with the other images from that other time period and from Cache County itself. So yeah, that definitely worked. And it went better with the jacket, it went better with the rest of the sheriff's face and demeanor and so on. It was the only bit of creative license I actually took with this image, but it felt hollow and not right when I tried it with just having that white space in there as per the original image. And I think that's because I don't know what details were there originally. And sometimes you just have to change things. I mean, you can see at the moment with the ears, I didn't have enough details to go on. There are obviously ears there, but there are a lot of details that are missing and gone and kind of lost in translation. So there are more areas there where I really have to use my creative license as an artist, as an illustrator, to be able to work those in. The eyes were very, very, you know, lost, but there was enough there, just enough for me to be able to rescue those and rework those. But this is why this is a job for an illustrator and an artist, a digital painter, rather than a photo retoucher, who would be restoring this using photographs, which for me is kind of, you know, it's kind of a Frankenstein patchwork of other people. And I'm sure a really good retoucher could do a great job, but it would take a long time to get it to look really good. And it may not look exactly like the person, at least not in the spirit, even if it does look like a real photograph. And we'll be able to get it looking more like the spirit of the person, even if it doesn't look 100% like a photograph. So it's a trade-off. It's a trade-off you're going to get. It just depends which you'd like more. Do you want the spirit of the person, or do you want it to look more like a photograph? And you'll see at the end which one we get. And I'll leave it up to you. You put it in the comments which one you actually prefer. The collar and the jacket here coming along nicely. I did change it pretty much all to black, but I'm just adding in those tonal values here so we can see the collar and the button, and just some slight shades so we see some fabric. And over the top of this later on, we'll add some material textures as well. And that's using another brush that I didn't mention earlier on. But yeah, quite simple. You could do that again with the Photoshop standard brush, or just any fabric styled textured brush that you feel like using. If it's like Hessian or a wool texture, something a bit patchworky. You could even use a Photoshop layer texture, and then patchwork it in over the top. Anything that just looks cool that takes your fancy. But for me, just a little simple texture brush will do that. Now, you'll see it when I come to it later on, but that is much later, that's nearer the end. But for right now, I'm just trying to crisp up the neck and get this all sitting right. And most of this work has been achieved by just working on the details that were in the original photograph and cleaning those up. Things like the ears, as I mentioned, we didn't have full details on. But with the bits that we have got, we can work those in. Now, obviously the background was just fully white, and now we've changed it to grey. That's absolutely fine. But I just want to get those edges as sharp as possible. So if I flick this on and off between the original image, you can see the difference that has been done so far. I mean, it doesn't look like a photograph yet. No, it's not gonna. We've still got a fair way to go. But yeah, the difference between the original and this is quite a lot, obviously. And we have still got a long way to go. But you can see the eyes, the hair. We've already done quite a lot. There was no tonal value in the original image. The background, we will do more work on that, but I still want to leave that fairly simplistic. The jacket, the tie, the whole neck area looks a lot more done. The chin as well, he had no definition there. That was very sloppy. It was almost empty in places. And under the lip as well. Now the lip still needs a lot of work because it looks very Play-Doh-ish. But now the main face is still blasted out and very white, and we will get to that. But I think we're going to do a lot of that once we've gotten the hair correct. The hair is still this kind of amorphous shape, but his hair, like I mentioned before, is very unsymmetrical. So I think we have to work out what that shape is. Now, you have to be kind of brave to decide that. It's not as if I'm doing this as a random piece for myself, or it's not a fantasy piece or anything like that. It's a historically accurate piece, so I have to try and be as correct as possible. So yeah, so I'm going to take my time and work out what exactly this hairstyle is. So that's why I haven't started on that yet. I keep doing it a little bit at a time. I'd rather work out the exact nose shape or eyebrow shape before I work out exactly his kind of facial structure. And I think actually having the hair, the correct hair in place is a little more difficult to do than the nose, for example. So yeah, that's why we leave certain things a bit longer than others. Now the eyes I thought were going to be a challenge, but it turns out we had a little more of those in place than others. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're just going to keep working on the areas that we've got, and as they build up more and more, they'll kind of expand outwards, like a puddle that just keeps getting bigger, and they'll merge into each other. Like the eyes here are coming along nicely, and you can see that I'm drawing out the eyebrows, and those bits are expanding into the cheeks and so on. So even though I've got grey down here now, I'm actually adding more white onto the face just to correct bits of grey that really shouldn't be there. Now, it kind of feels like going backwards, but it's just to emphasize the stronger parts. Like on his neck here, he has a really strong Adam's apple. On parts of his face where I've added a lot of shading, you know, on the darker side of his face, I just want to pull that back in sections. At this point, I realized he started to look like Chevy Chase. I actually felt this was kind of like the correct way to go, but it did start to bother me that I was doing somebody who looked like Chevy Chase, even though you do see historical portraits, you know, of people who look like celebrities. I just didn't want to do him like Chevy Chase. So yeah, I had to kind of change this up a little bit. So I don't know, maybe he did look a little like Chevy Chase, but you know, I'm not a huge Chevy Chase fan. I'm not saying I'm against Chevy Chase. Let's not go down that route. But no, it was weird. It was weird. But I just didn't want people to think I was drawing Chevy Chase. Let's just say that. So yeah. So I started drawing him, and then I just started thinking, is this Chevy Chase? Why am I drawing Chevy Chase? So yeah, I just had to make sure consciously that it didn't look too much like Chevy Chase at the end. But the shading looked right, and I was happy with this. So once I had drawn over in white all the bits that I needed to, I could then go back with a little more grey and draw in all the parts I wanted to. Now, where I would normally blanket in areas of grey, I just kept going over with white and grey. But I wanted to get this hairline right as well, and it meant that once I had a little more of the shading done, I could go back and get a little more of this hairline done. And yeah, tricky as it was, I could do that. Now, I hadn't gotten too much of the hair done, but what I decided to do was take in a light grey brush and actually draw the individual strands of the hair over the black. Now that just wasn't shown on this image at all. The original image just had a black silhouette of hair. There was no highlights on the hair at all. There was some on the mustache, but not on the hair. I decided, however, it was best to put the highlights on the hair. If nothing else, it allowed me to work out what the hairstyle was. Later on, if need be, I could get rid of those highlights, because then I would have kind of the structure of the hair in place. But for right now, I would put in those highlights and also do the kind of mustache at the same time. But in typical fashion, I was running around all over the image, doing the collar as well, so on and so on. Funnily enough, no matter which piece of software you're using, by the way, if you're using Photoshop, if you're using Clip Studio, no matter what you're using, all of this you can do in that piece of software. So don't feel like, you know, if you're watching this and you're using a different piece of software, that you can't do any of the techniques that I'm showing you. Everything I'm showing you can be done in an older version of Photoshop, can be done in the latest version. You know, all of the techniques here, completely doable in any software. and on any drawing tablet as well. Obviously, this is my setup and this is what I'm using, but here you go. I just wanted to make that clear right now for you guys, because I know I always get asked questions about my setup, what I'm using, what software, etc, etc. I've already mentioned brushes, but I just wanted to go on and mention that as well. Funnily enough, it's at a place now where the image is still really washed out in the face, etc. If I just bleached the background as well and then kind of degraded the photo a lot with noise and, just washed those blacks out to kind of a light grey, etc., I could call the image finished. His eyes look good, his mustache looks good, etc. If I really washed it out and degraded it, I could say it was done, but I'm not that kind of a guy. I like to make my images look super realistic and super detailed. So yeah, let's keep cracking. For me, I just wanna get this hairstyle more correct, more in line with how I felt it should be. For me, it's more about the essence and the soul of I almost said the character then, but obviously the sheriff. And I want to get this looking more aligned with what I see when I look at the original photograph. You'll notice that I've pretty much been using the similar size brush the whole time as well. It's not too big, but I haven't been using an overly small brush either. I've been mainly relying on pen pressure. This is actually the Wacom Pro Pen 1, so it's only got 4,000 levels of pressure. It's not even the latest Pro Pen 2 with 8,000 levels. But it's fine. It's absolutely fine. It's doing an absolutely great job with keeping up with my needs. It's allowing me lovely small strokes. It's well balanced. It's got tilt and rotate in there as well. So I'm getting these lovely fine strokes, and yeah, it's allowing me really nice fine lines. I'm getting that hair detail in. I'm getting tiny extra bits of skin detail in. I'm doing this tie as well at the same time, and that's a good thing about being able to draw a grayscale image. If you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know that a lot of the time what I do is I draw in grayscale anyway first before I draw color. That's not always true. Sometimes I draw in full color, but yeah, most of the time I draw in grayscale first before I color an image. The only difference here is that I won't color this image. It's just going to be a grayscale image, and then I'm going to add some details to degrade it a bit and keep it looking like an old-fashioned photograph. It's going to be awesome. But I can always scale up the brush size here, as I've just done, to start adding a little more grayscale and start adding a little more shading on. This is done on a new layer. Obviously, I don't want to mess anything up. I mean, you want to go over the top of the detail you've done, but you still want the option to kind of go back on the work you've done without erasing the stuff underneath. Next, I'm gonna just add in some slight hair brushing that I mentioned before, and going with the kind of hairlines and kind of working out that detail on the hair. Get the swooshes and the individual hairs, just so I can work out the structure more than anything. Do I actually want to have highlights in his hairs? And by highlights, I just mean reflections from the lights. I'm not overly sure. I'm not overly sure that I do. In the photographs from the other period, from the same period, you can see that. You can see, light reflected off the hair, and it does work, and it's fine. I would then take the blackness out of the hair, But this is really for me to work out the structure of the hair more than it is to add detail to the photograph. I quite like the fact that the hair is just black. But because we couldn't see the true definition of the hair, because it was just an amorphous black shape, I need to know his actual hairstyle. Otherwise, it would just be a bit weird. I think it's fine if you're just doing a sketch or if you're working on a fantasy piece. That's But if you wanted to do something like if you wanted to do an actual portrait rather than a full body shot, then I would say to do this. Even if it was a portrait of somebody living, if it's not a historically accurate piece, or if it's a character piece, if you want it to have real significance as a character, then I would say to definitely work out the hairstyle in detail. For me, I like drawing each individual hair rather than using hairbrushes. Hairbrushes are great for being quick if you want to do sketches, but when I draw hair, I like to use a regular Photoshop brush, set to small, and just go in there and draw the hairs. Remember, hairbrushes give you several lines all at once, like drawing with a garden spade. But they're all kind of next to each other, aligned. It looks like a Photoshop brush. But when you draw each individual hair with a regular brush, you just draw one line at a time. And, each line reacts differently. And you get the decision to place each hair where you want it. And in real life, each hair is individual. So it's more realistic. And that's just the way I prefer it. And the same with the mustache. It doesn't actually take too long to draw each individual hair. Like I said, this whole thing was done in 5 hours. And that isn't that long to go from having virtually nothing to having kind of a postal stamp quality. Well, not even that. There's just monotone black and white outline of a face to go into the finished article. 5 hours was a great period of time to be able to do this in. So I was very happy with that. Once you see that at the end of this video, we're 35 minutes in now, and it's already looking, I'm already really happy with this. I've gotten to the point now where I've zoomed in for the first time ever, so I can work on this. The ears. I didn't think the ears were gonna entrap me really, but it turns out, yeah, the ears on the sheriff here were actually quite difficult. I wasn't exactly sure. Ear shape is such a unique thing. I think as a digital painter, you don't realize exactly how different everybody's ears are. If I can encourage you to spend a day going around and just looking at everybody's ears and seeing how unique everybody's ear shapes are, you'll be kind of creeped out by the end of that day. Some people have really bizarre ear shapes. They are really individual. Everybody's ears are really individual. It's even more so than fingerprints in some ways. Yeah, you will be creeped out by how different people are when it comes to ears. So yeah, do that. Spend a day, even photograph them. Yeah, you'll be weirded out by that. And so when I drew him, I tried to get as much detail out as the original photograph as possible, but there was just nothing there. A couple of tiny lines, but nothing where the lobes were, the bottom of the ears. So I had to make a lot of it up, and I was upset by that, but I did what I could. And they looked okay. I was happy with them, but I was a bit upset that I had made up more than I wanted to originally. The eyes, I was very happy with that. The eyes did look very much like the original image. So the next thing that I really have to do now, because we're getting into the meat of it, is just work on the really fine detail. And now that we've got enough of this done, we can, we're zoomed in, which I had avoided this whole time, really up until now. I I know who this character is, and I feel that the essence is correct, and I feel that he looks enough like the the sheriff in the original image. I've mapped in the hairstyle that I feel is kind of right. I'm not entirely 100% happy with it, but I've mapped enough of it in. I do feel that I need to zoom in now, because the nose, obviously the details of the nose don't look right once you zoom into it, and we want this to look photographically correct, so I have to be able to zoom in at this point to to make that nose anatomically correct. It's just that straightforward. And what you can do is you can always bring up reference images and look at noses. You don't have to have noses from that period of time, although it's not a bad idea. You'll always find that does help. I don't know why, but people do change over periods of time. Animals as well. Animals spectacularly do change over periods of time, especially dogs, for instance. We've bred dogs, specifically bred dogs to change over time, but people do change as well over time. And not just in terms of clothing, hairstyles, mustaches, things like that, but facial features do change from places to, periods of time. So that's always worth checking out. I mean, obviously, I could just have a picture of Chevy Chase. I shouldn't push that. I shouldn't keep saying that, but yeah. I can also use free transform, warp, copy and paste areas, select them over the top, and manipulate what I've already got if I need to. But turning on and off the original image, you can see the difference here, and it's always nice to flick back and forth over the top of that, and I can see the differences between the two, and I can say, right, well, I feel the mustache shape seems to have changed as I've added details to it. I can see bits of difference in the hair shape now since I added detail to that. So I know exactly what I've got to do. Now I've taken that original image, I've shrunk it down, I've added it into the corner, quick save. And now that I've got that in the top corner, it gives me a quick little reference image there that I can keep a closer eye on. I have got it on my other screen, but now I've got it permanently stuck there in the corner. Now you can do that from the very beginning. Some people do. I didn't want to do that from the very beginning, just because it's nicer in a way to just kind of get on with it, let it evolve, and I find it quicker to work if I don't have that, if I'm not always if my eye isn't always just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And you've seen how often I've kept revealing the original image. It's not actually much. It's only been a few times while I've actually been working on this. But it is pretty close to this. So realistically, with a few simple changes, getting that mustache shape correct, getting the hair a little more towards the original shape. Here I want to add in, he had a larger Adam's apple. So I'm just going to get that shape in there and get that more defined. And yeah, I think adding a few more shapes, I think his eyes as well needed eyebrows. I think needed a little more redefining. I think his eyes were a little more narrowed. He's a sheriff. So yeah, the little corrections like that. Also, I've got his jacket a lot darker. That was always my intention. but now that I look at it as a whole, the overall image, I'm going to add some of that lightness back in. Not as much as on the original photograph, but some of it. And this is partly to do with the fact that I'm going to degrade the image afterwards. So it might be better just to add some of it back in. Now, this is very specific to how my workflow is going to be on this, and I already know the steps that I'm going to take. I'm going to paint this as a pretty normal portrait and then just add the degradation on at the end over the top. That way, if the client comes back and says, oh, can you just tweak the mustache a bit, then I just peel back the degradation, tweak the mustache, and then put the degradation back on. That is a nice safe way to work when you're doing something for a client like this. Whereas if I did the degradation in amongst it all, then the client wants the mustache tweaking. You've run into a real problem. Things like adding dust, scratches, noise, etc. You can't peel those things back as easily. So it's always something to think about. So here at the moment, I'm just using a black brush, and I'm just going in with a small brush and just refining the lines, making them nice, crisp, sharp, and getting that collar to look as nice as possible. It's pretty simple work. It's just getting it to look nice and defined. Just adding shadows in the right parts, and I'm just changing the size of the collar really to match up what was in the original photograph. I think I did tweak it a little bit, but that was just to make the collar stand out. But like I say, I'm not making it as light in certain areas as the original photograph. It'll make sense once I add the texture over the top of the jacket and then add the degradation on top of that. It's very subtle work, but you'll see it at the end. So here, just adding on that lightness, and that also forms the kind of folds in the fabric as well. I think at first I go a bit over the top with this, but I always manage to kind of pull it back a bit as well. Partly what was interesting about this entire commission was knowing who this man was and what he did for a living. Now, at the time when I started this, I didn't know much about him. I didn't know, for example, what his deeds were, what he'd done, if he'd done anything of extraordinary valor, or I just didn't know much. So, I knew he was a sheriff. I knew he'd served 100 years ago in Cache County, Utah. I knew that his photo was pretty much the only photo that had kind of been lost to time, and that the county wanted it restored so they could make a plaque for him. But that was pretty much all I knew. I've been given some information since on the sheriff and his deeds. Yeah, so it's very, very cool to hear all that information. But it was this weird thing where I'm staring into the sheriff's eyes, kind of trying to work out who he was, what he'd done. This very stern look, and yeah, you're really trying to work out who this person might have been, and trying to make this very austere gentleman come to life. And it's something you do with all portraits while you're working on them, whether it's traditional photo restoration or whether it's an illustration portrait. Now, normally you do a portrait based on the person, normally you've been talking to them or you've been talking to their relative. Now, I was talking to the sheriff's department. But yeah, so I had very little idea, and I could have asked for all of that up front, but I was given some information, but not too much, and it was strange. I felt for once that I didn't need too much, and it was nicer to go on kind of the mystery, to be honest. Yeah, because I had so little information in the image. It was nicer to kind of pull that out of the image before I found out too much about the sheriff himself as well. I don't know. I just found that really intriguing. but yeah, this was a lot of fun, and especially because I'm so used to doing portraits where I know so much about the person, and I've been given so much information about the person, and I can see a very good image of the person up front. So this was nice to do something which was almost a complete mystery, both in terms of the information I have on the person and the images of the person that I get. You know, normally I have full access, even to somebody's Facebook page, you know, with all their most embarrassing photographs. But this time I get one. I got 2 photos, I think, of him, and the other one was more degraded than this. So yeah, but this is coming along nicely. I'm really happy with this. That you can see here that I'm changing the shape of the mustache. What I'm doing is I'm kind of bowing it out slightly. I'm just changing the overall shape of the mustache so it fits more in line with the shape of the original mustache. And then I'm going to do that with the hair as well. So yeah, hopefully when I flick the big original image on top over, yeah, you'll see that the two align more, and I'll do the eyebrows and eyes as well, and just little tweaks here and there so you can see what the differences are. And then I'll tweak areas that I know I've neglected along the way, things like his lips, or the bottom lip anyway, that you can see. I've barely touched that since the first 5 minutes of this video, where I started adding in that initial shading. I haven't really touched his lower lip. Why? It's defined enough for now. You know, it just didn't need it. Needed it? It just didn't need it, and that was kind of good enough. All that white light down his left hand side of his face. There's no detail there. All those areas that I've neglected so far, they can then come into play, but only once I've corrected the areas that don't line up with the original image. The great thing is that the white lines in the hair, the highlights, have given us a lot of structure work to go on. So even when we kind of blacken these out, for instance, you know, we'll still have a lot of that structure in there, you know, but any changes that we make to the hair now, for example, you know, that initial structure from the highlights kind of gives us a guide to go off. Now, that also rings true from the mustache that we've already started making changes to, and the eyebrows as well. These eyebrows are a little too thick, and we do need to make changes to them. You know, they're a little too high, I think. His eyebrows need to be a little not as tall. His eyes need to seem narrower. Not his eyes themselves, but the eyebrows need to change somewhat. And that's just by looking at the original image. And you know, when we flicked back and forth before, I could see the difference there. And I don't want to keep flicking back and forth because it's quite annoying. I just don't like to do it. But having the thumbnail now up in the top corner of the image while I'm working there, I can see he barely looked like he had big, You know, he definitely didn't have big bushy eyebrows, but I want to make his eyebrows a bit smaller. So yeah, I'm just going to reduce the size of those eyebrows, and I'm going to do that with a small white brush or a light grey brush rather than by erasing on the layer that I drew, or so on and so forth. You know, I'm just going to push forwards by drawing on top of rather than trying to take away from. And the good thing is that I'm also drawing with that same kind of light grey here. I'm also adding on more detail around the eyes. Now, how do I know what that detail might be? Well, I'm using the reference images that I've got on the other monitor and looking at what kind of detail level they had around their eyes, and just kind of taking inspiration from them. Those gentlemen are around the same age as roughly this gentleman, I believe, would be. It's really hard to tell, but just using the information I do know about him and so on, yeah, I am swinging in the dark a bit with his age, but yeah, it just kind of feels right. And judging on the original photograph as well, I know he's not a very young man, so I know roughly kind of what lines he has around his face, and just because I've done a lot of portrait work over the years, yeah, I'm happy with this kind of level of detail. And like I say, you start around the details that you have got, and you kind of expand outwards from there. So I'm happy enough with the eyes, so I expand out around the eyes and onto the cheeks, etc., etc. And same goes for the nose and the mustache. You start out, you get the details you have correct, you know the overall shape of the mustache, etc., and you expand outwards from there. And eventually they'll all connect. You know, the nostrils, the base of the nose will span up and connect to the cheeks, where the detail from the eyes have connected as well, and that will expand down to the chin, and so forth and so forth, and before you know it, you're done. I'm not using anything bizarre in terms of brushes. I've started drawing now with the more tonal values in the forehead, etc., which is something I've been waiting to do for a long time. But this again is just the standard Photoshop brush, having only 4,000 levels of pressure here on the 27QHD touch, but it allows me to easily, to add on slight bits of grey tonal value. I've got great control over the stylus because I've got tilt and rotate and hover as well, which is one thing people often forget about with the Wacom Cintiqs, is that you can control the tilt of the brush and everything when you're only hovering the stylus above the tablet. It actually makes a huge difference, because you know where your stylus is going to be before it actually touches the tablet. Now, again, just refining the details I've got there, going over the mustache, which was a constant battle to get that absolutely correct. Again, the bottom lip I still haven't really touched, but that for me was a journey of a little by little. I never really went in and kind of hammered the chin and the lower lip, but I just did it a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit, and I'm not sure why I didn't sit down and say, "Yep, let's do the chin," but I felt I never had to. Even at the end, yeah, it never really had to do that in the end. The forehead, though, uh, it's weird. Until I was 100% happy with the hair, I felt I didn't want to fully kind of accept the challenge of working out his head shape. I had in my head what shape I felt the head was, but it's a curious one, because the sheriff's obviously lost a bit of hair over the course of his duties. So yeah, it's how much you want to put into that. Head shapes can be very, very different on men, and yeah, it's a curious one. I think has he just got a really tall forehead, or is he actually starting to go balder than we think because of the photo degradation? It's often hard to work out exactly what's going on. I don't want to do him any disservice, obviously. I think when you're doing a historical image like this, you know, you want to be very, very respectful of the person you're doing the portrait of, but you also want to remain very truthful to the facts. You can't just, you know, you can't just say, well, this is what I believe it is. You know, you want to have a certain level of respect in there, and it's a balancing act. It really is a balancing act. So yeah, for me on this front, I felt I wanted to get it looking as respectful as possible while remaining that truthfulness. To remain respectful, I would have given him a full head of hair, luscious long locks of hair. But to remain truthful, yeah, he's got a bit of a kind of a lopsided, strange hairstyle, and he looks like he's going a bit bald, and maybe that's why the hairstyle's a bit lopsided. Maybe it is a comb over. I couldn't work it out. But the end of the day, it's a bit of a strange one, and you can't ask anybody about it. There's no better pictures of it. When I looked for other reference images of hairstyles from the same period, there's nothing really, there's nothing really that it could have been that I could have gone on. So, yeah, it's just a case of tidying it up, being respectful, and for me at the end, yeah, I felt I'd done that, and I'd gotten away with that, and I hadn't actually changed the hair from what it was. Now the highlights that I've drawn in at the moment don't look right to me. If anything, it looks like a bit of a strange thing going on. But this is me at the point where I'm just working out what it is. But I've left it. I'm working on the eyes right now, and I'm going to come back to the hair again. With the eyes, I've already had kind of 2 different tries at this, and you can see the difference there when I turn those layers on and off, how the eyes have slightly evolved and changed, and how I need to keep kind of coming back to them and tweaking them just to kind of see the differences. You see how much better the mustache is, and how the mustache looks more like the original photograph there. And yeah, all these little tweaks help, and they all make him look more like the original man in the original sheriff there in the photograph. And I think tweaking the hairstyle as well will, and yeah, just little bits like that. But I think once we go ahead and play with the tonal range of the skin as well, that'll help a lot more. I mean, for right now, you can see that I've just blended the skin tone, but we'll go back and add a lot more detail into that skin tone as well to really help bring out the highlights. But for right now, I think that's looking, really, really good. It was funny that Drobo and I were talking about running the competition together to give away the Drobo 5D3 Gold Edition, and we were talking about this idea of golden memories, and about not losing not losing any images or photographs, or any work or anything like that. And then all of a sudden, the Cache County Sheriff's Department asked me to help restore this image, and I thought this would make a great piece for the competition video, to show people, hey, you don't have to lose images. You can restore them. And I thought this would make a nice showpiece to say, hey, I can restore this and then I can put this on the Drobo and it will never be lost ever again. So if you did see that previous video, that's why I put that in this, just to say, hey, look, it will never be lost again now. I just thought I'd kind of re-explain that. if you hadn't seen that video, if you heard me mention it in the beginning of this one, there you go. But go and check that out anyway. Even if the competition's over now, it will still make sense. But hopefully you're watching this video straight away when I've launched it. That competition is still running, and you can get the chance to win yourself, what essentially is, £1,000, $1,000 worth of equipment. Otherwise, you never know. I might still have other competitions running. Always worth a try. So yeah, moving on now. Quick plug. But moving on now. Yeah. So this is really starting to come alive, and I'm adding the darker tones into the shading. But I'm doing this on both sides now rather than just the one, and it is a really good way of helping to bring the whole image together in terms of facial structure. I have to rub it out over the background because I'm still trying to keep the background really neutral. When I looked at portrait photography from the era, it's pretty much blank backgrounds, whether they've got slight gradients on them or whether they're just stark white. They're just plain backgrounds. But some of them have really white bleached out skin, and some of them have a good amount of skin texture of patterning on. Now I could have gone for a more bleached out look and kept it simple. I think I could have done that and it would have worked quite well to have hidden the fact that this was an illustration. But I think just being a perfectionist, yeah, I wanted to add in the skin texture, and you go for gold and just see how it turns out. If it didn't turn out as well as I wanted it to, then I could have hidden any mistakes with the just not corrupting, but just aging the photo, the finished illustration a bit more to make it look like that. So yeah, it's my backup plan essentially. At this point though, we've got the ability to just add in more highlights and more shading around the nose and the jaw and the cheekbones, etc. Just all to help build up the structure and the tones in the sheriff's face here. All the time having that thumbnail in the corner of the picture to remind myself exactly where I'm going with this, what I want to do with this. This took me 5 hours to complete, during which I sat down for the whole thing. Now, I really don't advise that, especially if you've got the ergotron arm. You should be standing up, moving around, etc, etc. But I had to sit down for the whole thing and stayed pretty much in one position. But that was so I could record this on my screen and record this on my camera, so you guys had this view for the entire thing. I would suggest moving up, standing up, sitting down, and just changing position, every 20 minutes or so. I'm a big believer in ergonomics for artists. I've got videos on that if you want to go and check those out. I've got videos on the best chairs for artists, on ergotron arms for different tablets, etc, etc. But sometimes I just have to make sacrifices for getting you guys video. I did still take breaks, once an hour, which still really isn't enough as I'm supposed to do, but I just wanted to power through, get this done, and get the video up there. I was on a deadline for getting the competition video out. But it is what it is, and that's, if you're a professional illustrator, that's just what you do. But I thought I'd just mention this because obviously you can see I'm just sat here kind of just doing the whole thing. My illustrations normally take a lot longer than 5 hours. But I didn't want you guys thinking that I just sat here for 5 hours in one straight block. Especially if you're not a professional, I don't want you thinking this is what is expected of you. If you become a professional, if you start taking on commission work, etc., etc., no one expects you to sit there for 5 hours without moving. You know, not only is that not expected of you, that is practically torture for any professional artist to not move for 5 hours. We can do it, we do it, we shouldn't do it. You know, you have to get up, you have to move around. Otherwise, by the time you're a little old person, you know, you're gonna be in a lot of agony. Which is why we do use ergotron arms, which is why we do have good seats, which is why we take breaks. If you are watching this on double speed or 1.5 speed or whatever, you will have noticed the changes quicker in how this has evolved. I'm in the section of the painting now, I'm over the 1 hour mark, where I'm in the section now where I'm basically just working on the details where, I'm sorry this isn't very exciting, but the truth is I just have to keep tweaking details until it looks more and more and more like the actual sheriff from the photo. So as I mentioned before, getting those eyebrows looking 100%, getting that mustache looking 100%, and getting rid of that weird hairdo. It's looking ever more increasingly weird to me, and it looks like just a pile of hair on top of his head. And I'm fathoming what I'm gonna do with that. I really don't know. It just looks like a kind of a swirly pile on top of his head. And I keep adding highlights to try and kind of work out the rough structure of what that might be. It's a bit weird, but is it the kind of thing that I'm gonna have to change? Because at the moment it is roughly the silhouette of where it was in the beginning. But do I have to change it from that? Again, this is the argument of whether I have to stay historically accurate to what the original image was, or do I have to be respectful to the sheriff? Because it's the delicate balance of being respectful versus historically accurate. The hair is, is the big discussion there. And I'm just leaving it until I can make that decision in my own head. The face I'm pretty much happy with. I'm tweaking other details while I work this out in my head. How is this hair gonna look? In the original photo, it's just black. There's no details there, and I could just black it in now and say job done. But no, I need to know this for my own peace of mind as an illustrator. I need to work out what that hair is. How does that work? How does that function as an actual style? What hair is where? Do you see what I mean? I would love to be able to say this bit of hair goes here, this bit of hair winds around there, and leave some highlights in so that other people can see that and it looks more realistic. And in the end, yeah, that's how it turns out, and I was happy with it. But I don't think I would have been happy if I'd have just said, you know what, I'm just gonna rough it in, it'll be fine. The funny thing is, though, that I actually did go and blur sections of this painting afterwards to make it more realistic to the period, based on the the photos that that are from that period, they had a lot of blurring. So some more than others, but they were sharp on certain elements like the eyes and the mouth, etc., etc. But kind of the shoulders and the back of the head were blurrier. So I didn't have to be so picky with it, but just as a professional, you feel the need, the drive to want to know about these things, and I think that even at some subconscious level, people do appreciate that, and I think it's worth spending the extra time on. And I think if anybody asks, what one piece of advice can you give to make a painting better, it's always spend more time on it. The more time you spend on a piece, the better it will be. And that's always the case. Quite often, it's going to be spend more time at the beginning, because once you've worked out all that, beginning sketch, say like the anatomy, etc., once you've got that right, then you'll have to spend less time later on. If you don't get your layout, your composition, your anatomy right, you'll spend a lot more time later on correcting all that stuff. With something like this, the initial photograph that I was handed in the beginning, well, that was my composition and my anatomy, so I didn't have to worry too much about that. But now I have to worry about the nuances and about making this illustration look like that sheriff. And the nuances are the things that you wouldn't have suspected, like getting that hairstyle just absolutely correct. And funnily enough, that wasn't one of the things that I expected it was going to be. I didn't expect it to be that hair that is now looking even worse. The bits that I thought were going to be the hardest were the eyes. I thought the mustache was going to be nice and easy. You can see that I'm actually redrawing bits of the mustache here because it had actually gone a bit too long, in fact. But yeah, I didn't think the hair was going to be a big problem. I thought the eyes were going to be. I mean, yes, the eyebrows have caused me a little bit of an issue, but the hair, the ears, they're the areas that caused me the most issue. I mean, obviously, the fact that his skin was just white, there was no detail, no shading, nothing like that to go on. A little bit of a challenge, but a good challenge. So really, this hair thing, I think this illustration would have been done in 3.5 hours rather than 5 hours had it not been for that hair debate. But definitely worth it in the end. Definitely worth it in the end. And I think most younger artists would have jumped ship before finishing the hair properly. And I think you can always tell that. I think that does become a major issue. That's the difference between an amateur artist and a pro artist. Not that I'm having a dig or trying to blow my own trumpet, but yeah, a professional artist puts more time into the things like that. And I think that's certainly, I think you just have to. And if you're an amateur artist or a semi-pro artist, then that's my one piece of advice, is to put more time into the nuances, or just double the amount of time you spend on an image before you move on to your next one. Especially if you are an amateur, then you've got all the time in the world because you're not being commissioned to draw things. The next thing you draw is just something for you anyway, so why not just stick to drawing what you were drawing? You've got to remember that the old masters, they could spend years drawing one thing. So when you said this took ages, and by ages you mean, the best part of a week, well, really, is that ages when you consider old masters spent years on one painting? I spend 2 weeks typically on one piece. So yeah, this for 5 hours I was really happy with, but how long do you want to spend on something? It's just something it's a question you have to ask yourself. But for me personally, yeah, I was really happy with this by the time I'd finished it. At this stage now, I'm happy enough with the hair that I can at least move on to the background for now. You know, that background has just been sitting there for so long, just how it was. So I can move on and just put in a little bit of a better background. And this is really just so I can carry on with a portrait without looking at such a roughed in, kind of two-tone background. But I want to start adding in bits of highlight over the top of that, and all I'm doing is adding in kind of a bit of light grey over the top, and this is on a different layer. The idea being that this would kind of blur him into the background a slight bit. It's almost like a light coming in around him. And then I'm just adding in more greys and different greys as well. It's just to add in a slight variation there so it looks a little different. And again, this is just looking at the other reference images that I had in the on the other monitor. So yeah. But I can make that all really subtle and fade that in as much as I needed to. The hairstyle looked a little more believable like this. One thing I did want to go ahead and do was just add a layer on top with layer effects and see what it looked like when it was more bleached out. I think this was a little over the top looking back in hindsight, but at the time I was just experimenting. I just wanted to stop what I was doing and take a brief chance to look at my portrait as it stood with the kind of bleached out look and adding some noise and grit to it. That way, even if it wasn't correct, even if it wasn't finished, I could say, okay, how much work do I need to do and where exactly do I need to do it? Because once you've got the layer effects on, like the grit and the noise, and it's a bit more flashed out, you get a better sense for which elements you have to do more drawing work on top of. So I've been waiting a long time throughout this painting to actually crack on and, age this image. But I wasn't sure whether this was the right time, whether I should just wait right up until the end. But I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to do this, how I was going to add all the noise, all the dust and scratches. I had a few ideas, but I wasn't sure which one would be the best. So I decided to do this now, just so I could clarify to myself which way would be the best before carrying on. Then I just decided to pull that back a little bit and add the skin texture with this brush here. This is one of my own brushes that I created using a photograph of some skin close up, and yeah, works really well. So I was happy with this, and yeah, brilliant. Now it's really funny because this simple act of adding pores to the skin, adding a skin texture, kind of just really helped make this feel a lot more photographic. And then I added, a simple fabric texture to the sheriff's jacket. Yeah, just amazingly helped. Now you can see I've also gone back to the 100% screen view in Photoshop here, and that just allows me to see this image in the same way that I've seen it for most of the time that I've been working on it. So I've got that same overview. You'll notice that I've also gotten rid of the small thumbnail in the corner. I feel confident now that he looks a lot more like the original photograph. I'm just overlaying that original photograph on really small and experimenting with actually keeping that on permanently as a small overlay in layer form. But yeah, not overly keen on it. So, but just experimenting with my layers. And I'm looking through for different brushes. Like I say, I don't like using custom brushes that often, but sometimes they are good just for doing the odd texture. I think they're great as long as you don't overuse them. For me though, this one, I'm trying to find a good fabric texture. I had to alter one that I already had just to get the fabric texture that I wanted, and it was more about just finding something that looked like a rough cotton, so that I could add this onto the jacket, and it worked. It was simple enough, and yeah, it just gave me enough that I could add that very subtly onto the jacket, and that was the thing. If this was for anything other than historical image, if this was, say, a more modern portrait, or if this was a fantasy piece or a sci-fi piece, I'd probably make this stand out a little more than it did. But because this was a historical portrait, I wanted this pattern to be very subtle. The skin texture, I did the same as I do all the time. You know, I made it stand out and made it just look realistic. But the fabric texture, I made it a little more subtle than I normally would, just because I really didn't want to make that stand out. It wasn't corduroy, you know, it was a kind of a light cotton feel, and that's what I wanted. I had no idea what his jacket was actually made out of, but I just didn't want to attract that kind of attention to such a dark space that wasn't really important, knowing that cameras of that period, you know, weren't the latest Canon cameras that would capture every detail. I knew that I was going to potentially blur sections of this image anyway once I'd finished, and you know, I knew I wanted to draw attention to the face, and having textured details in the jacket might draw away from the face, so I kept this texture very low key. Now it's easy to, you know, just keep going around the edge here and just keep adding on little details. For me, I wanted to just get the shading right and just keep adding bits in. I know the shading's not right on the jacket, but I'm going to go in and tweak that a bit. For me, you know, one thing I want to do is just add more on here and get this a little bit darker. Definitely the shadows on the jacket aren't right as it is, because it looks too light. But you'll see that in a moment here. I'm gonna definitely just add more onto this one so I can get the right brush to hand. You know, all in all, I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4 brushes used, and that's not including size variations, obviously. You know, if I include the size variations, I'd probably run up to about only 20, maybe. I think I've been quite good during this period, but like I say, only 5 hours. So, and for me, 5 hours is incredibly short. I know some people are like, 5 hours, that's a lifetime. But yeah, for me, that's a sketch. So, but you can see by using the same texture brush here, but with black rather than white, we're actually getting rid of a lot of that detail, and it works really well as a shader for that jacket. So you're not losing detail, you're actually gaining detail, but kind of in reverse, which works ever so nicely. If you're unsure about doing this kind of thing, you know, adding detail on top of detail with a texture brush, then I would advise doing that in another layer. The same with anything though. If you're unsure about making a single mark on your painting, then new layer every time. My paintings typically run up to 3 gigabytes, and they typically run into 300 layers. So never be afraid of just clicking new layer. If you're unsure about any mark you might make on a painting, new layer. You've only got so many undos. Believe me, it's quicker to go through the undos and run out of undos than it is to just hit new layer, and then if you don't like what you paint, you can just delete that layer, grab another new layer. Or 3 days later you might be working on something and you need to just find that layer, rip it out, or find that layer, copy and paste it, or flip it, or whatever you need to do. But new layer, always new layer if you're not sure. And plus you can organize layers into folders, etc, etc, etc. New layers are your best friend. At the moment we've got rid of a lot of the detail with the kind of bright layer that we added on over the top there, and it looks good, but it looks nice and washed out, and it kind of matches the other photos of the era. Part of me is thinking though that maybe it looks a bit too much like an illustration. I mean, we're never fully gonna get away from that fact because it is an illustration. The human eye is always gonna be bright enough to tell you this is an illustration. No matter how good it is, all illustrations, your brain always tells you an illustration is an illustration. I do feel that I've done a good enough job that it doesn't look a cartoon, but there's something in your eye that will always tell you an illustration is an illustration. So what can we do? Well, first thing I want to do is start adding some noise in here. So I'm going to add a layer on that adds some noise in. It's kind of hard to see when you're watching a video, to see the noise and to see how well it does. So I'm just going to start adding some general layering on, and making this all a lot darker as well. Getting some noise in here and just throwing this around. So far you can't see too much, but believe me, it's looking good. So I'm just going back in now after doing a little light brushing and turning what I've just added in there into noise, and that should work quite well. I'm just going to go back in, change it up a bit, see whether what I've done actually works, and it's all just experimenting. I normally don't work too much in noise, but we're just going to experiment and see whether it's done anything. It's one of those things that in trying to capture real noise and make it work and make it look good, we don't know whether it's gonna do a good job or whether it's just gonna look a bit too photoshoppy. Generic noise engines aren't really that great. Another way to do it that I haven't done here is to find a picture. You can just Google image search for gritty old paper or old photograph texture, and you'll find sample texture papers that you can just lay over the top, and that'll do it. You just bring that in as a Photoshop layer and then just turn the layer style to overlay or multiply or something, and that will give you the same kind of job, and that'll even give you the dust and scratches and stuff like that. Or you can Google dust and scratches. For me, yeah, I could have done it that way, and that way would have looked good. I wanted to see if there was a way that I could do it just through filters and other bits and bobs, because if I could do it this way, then that meant I could kind of replicate it on any canvas, on any size. It just makes more sense to do it this way. Because if I use a Google image search, then that means that I'm using an image that I don't have the rights to use, and this is for a commission, so that's important. And also, any image that I get off Google is only going to be a certain size in pixels, so it may not be good enough quality. Isn't too big of an issue because you're resing it up, and if you're only turning it to multiply or something, you can kind of get away with it a lot of the times. But hey, just depends. For right now, I'm gonna turn that background a bit more white, just around the sheriff here. And I've got a good reason for doing that, and that's just because I want to see what he looks like with a pure white background. Some of the other photos that I've got from the era, they have a very, very white backgrounds that are very blown out, very almost looks stylized, and I wondered if that would fit more with the fact that this was an illustration, whether that would make it look more like a photograph, or whether that would make it look more like an illustration. You see here, when I flick back and forth between the original, it really works. And if I turn the layer opacity down on the original and kind of go half and half, kind of 50-50 with the work I've done, yeah, it really works. You can kind of see something there. Yeah, it looks kind of good. But then again, not entirely happy with it. So we'll scrub that as an idea. Bring that little thumbnail back, just so we can, see it there. Time to get this hair done. Time to get the hair done. I've gone a bit weird now. Yeah. You stuck with me this long. You can stick with me being weird, can't you? Comment below. If you stuck with me this long, then comment below. I want to know who is still here. Who has stuck with me this long? Comment below if you're still here. I want to know who has made it to the 1.5 hour mark, because you are an absolute champion. So just tell me in the comments below that you are a champion, and I will know that you have made it to the 1.5 hour mark, and that you are a true believer. I just want to know who you are, what your names are. Just let me know that you are a champion in the comments below, and I'll know exactly what you mean by that. That would be great to hear. Because, I get people commenting all the time, and I'm like, yeah, but I wonder if you actually watched the entire video. I don't know. Like, some people have clearly only watched the first 2 minutes, and they're asking questions. And I know this because I answered the question like half an hour in. And then other people, I know they've watched the entire thing because they comment on something that I answer at the end. But yeah, so if you're with me, comment below. Maybe you're watching this on hyper speed, you're watching this on like 2 times speed, in which case, this was for you. Told you I've gone weird. But that's because, like I say, a lot of the work that I do on a job like this is just, it's quite repetitive, and you're just doing little bits of tweaking. You're constantly going over the same thing again and again, redrawing the eyebrows and the mustache and hair and stuff like that. But that's what being a digital painter is about. It's just constantly working and working and working on the same bits to get them correct and get them right. And people ask for tips all the time. But the magic formula is just putting in the hard work. It is not free brushes from your favorite artists. It's you don't even need the best of the best tech, especially not when you're starting out. As long as the tech you've got is good enough to take you to the next level, and that's essentially it. You know, as long as it's not impeding your workflow, that's all you need, all you want. So if you're a pro, then yeah, you want the best of the best because it's earning you money. You know, and that's the way you think of it. You know, you can pay for your tech on your expenses. You know, you take out your taxes. But when you're just starting out, or if you're a semi-pro, then it just needs to get you to your next skill set level. Anyway. This feels like it's almost there. The hair now you can see I've added some black to. I've gotten rid of a lot of those highlights. And the highlights that I've got, it's pretty much there, man. That hair feels like it goes off in that direction. And it feels like kind of beautifully coiffed to one side. I feel like I've finally got a direction on that hair that works. I feel like I have thickened it out slightly from the original photograph. This happened naturally, not really by choice, but I don't mind it. I could thin it down slightly, but I don't feel the real need to do that. Yeah, if I took some out of this hair, where would I take it from? A little off the top, a little off the side. Yeah, I just don't. I don't feel too much need to do that. You know, I can tweak it a bit, but I don't feel the need to tweak it too much. I feel that a lot of this is actually shading on the inside here where I'm painting right now. In all fairness, yeah, this new shape and the highlights and everything look good. I'm really happy with this. And the way this has come on since the beginning, especially since some of his earlier hair looked awful, like some kind of raspberry ripple kind of ice cream sundae on his head kind of thing that I hated with a vengeance. But that's the way it goes when you're digital painting. You can really come up with some stuff that you absolutely hate, and you just have to keep drawing through it. You know how many times I did some sketch work for a new book cover the other day, and I'm the two characters on it, female character, male character. Female character, brilliant, cracked it straight away. The male character, I drew him 3 times, and this was just for the initial sketch. His pose was awful. It was just kind of stilted the entire time, and only kind of on the 4th time that I drew him did I like the pose. He was running, and every time I drew it, it looked good at first, but then once I drew more detail, he didn't look like he was running fast enough. He looked like it was a slow jog. And that was a big problem for me. I needed speed in there, but he didn't look like he was running at speed. He looked like he was just kind of pottering along. And yeah, so I had to keep redrawing that sketch before I sent it to client. By the time I finished it, yeah, I was happy with it. So, I mean, you see that. Hopefully I'll turn that into a tutorial as well. That's just the sketch. Once I've already got an approval now for that. So I have to turn that sketch into a finished book cover. So hopefully I'll record that whole thing, going from sketch to the finished book cover, and I'll turn that into a video as well. But this one, the eyebrows are now almost there as well. The hair's there. The mustache definitely there. That mustache looks so cool. I almost think about growing that mustache myself. I think we need maybe a touch more detail on the skin. The background definitely needs a bit of work because we've just got that plain grey background. We did put in a background before, but then we kind of got rid of it. And, you go back and forth on these things as to what you exactly want. Like I say, most of the backgrounds from the period styles were kind of bleached out. One or two had kind of gradient backgrounds or kind of blotchy backgrounds where you could see things out of focus, but some of those were quite nice. I like those as opposed to the kind of monochromatic backgrounds like this has currently got. This kind of makes it feel a bit more illustrated. I want something that could kind of help it to feel a little more photographic. I think by adding in some noise, etc., which we'll do, will kind of help bring it to life more as a photographic style image anyway. This does feel like the detail has come along really, really nicely. I'm just gonna add a bit more white onto the collar here and onto this tie as well. It really needs that extra bit of detail. I feel guilty that I made the tie black, but you can see that I've added such a highlight onto the tie that the tie now actually does, kind of feel like the same kind of shade and tone as the collar itself. So we haven't actually moved too far away from the original image for that tie. The overall skin tone is still very, very light, but that's because we've kind of bleached out the image overall anyway. But we are gonna make that darker. So don't worry about that. The Adam's apple, I'm just adding a bit of additional skin texture to. The kind of pores that we've got, the skin texture pores that we've got over the skin, kind of is a very dotty one, whereas the skin texture that you typically get on a neck is more little lines. So the best thing to do is maybe look at lots of portrait photos online that are taken from the same angle. I mean, this one's good because it's kind of just face on, so it's easy to find lots of portrait photography from this angle online. Maybe just examine those and look at the areas that you're currently painting. If this is the kind of thing that you're drawing, look at those areas, and say, this is the neck. I'm drawing this bit of neck at the moment. Look at the photo reference for that, and you'll see exactly what I mean. If you're used to drawing, then you probably have a good idea already what that looks like. I keep going back and forth on this jacket, thinking, should I make it darker? Should I make it lighter? I don't want this texture to stand out too much on the jacket, as I already said before. I want it to look nice and light. The tie I've just made a bit darker, even though I just said I want it to be a bit lighter. But when you make the jacket a bit darker, the tie looks nice darker as well. So you go back and forth on these things all the time. It looks nice. I'm just tweaking a layer here where I can make the whole thing look a bit darker. And I'm not sure how I feel about it, but the one thing I do know is that it just made it look a whole lot more photographic. So it's interesting. I've copied that and then I've collapsed it. And what I can do then is I can go in with a blur brush and just blur out areas. What I'm doing first of all actually is I'm going in with an eraser brush here and I'm just erasing the center. So it doesn't look to you like I'm doing much, but I've just erased the center there. Now I'm going around the edge and I'm blurring everything. So yeah. So sorry if this looks to you like I'm doing absolutely nothing but waving the stylus around, but I am actually blurring. Yeah. then I can go in and just play with the tonal values and really make those blacks blacker, which is quite weird in one way. But again, it's all about making it look more like a photograph. And it really helps to make it stand out. I don't know why in particular certain things work and certain things don't. Well, I do know why, but it's hard to explain exactly why some things work. It's a trick of the eye in many cases. Older photographs, the black fades over time, so realistically speaking, one thing you can do in Photoshop is to apply a layer and then make adjustments so that you then remove some of the black. In our original photo, which you can see here, all you have is black and white. You don't have any grays. But on a photo which is less deteriorated, you actually have a lot of grays and you have no true black. This plays with your mind's image of depth perception, but works quite well. Flicking between the two images like this gives you nothing but the idea he's in a disco, which the sheriff, of course, wouldn't be in a disco. However, sorry. But yeah, knocking back the black is a nice way to make it feel like an older photograph. I'll just create a grey level of noise here while my camera just quickly pulls back into focus, and I'll put that behind the sheriff here. What I want though is I want a smaller section of this because I want my noise to be bigger. So I'm just going to grab a small section of this and make that a lot larger. Now you see that way my noise looks bigger, and it instantly makes the whole thing look a lot more old-fashioned. Yay! And it really does work. The whole thing looks a lot more old-fashioned just by using that noise. And I can do that again. I can just grab another section of that noise. And again, do that. Now, the pixelation on this is a bit terrible, so I do have to blur that so that it doesn't look so much like bad pixelation, because obviously then it would be obvious that it's computer generated. So I just have to tweak that a bit. But unfortunately, it's not as easy to just create larger pixels, depending on which program you're using and how far you want to go out of your way. But yeah, the way I did it is just the lazy, quick way of doing it. I could have gotten a third-party program and created it that way, but this way works really well and it's really quick. I'm just going to grab that noise now, put it over the top, and change its effectiveness. Put it that way. We're not going to use it as kind of a total thing. I'm just going to use it in a really subtle way, kind of knock it back. The idea with this is that, we're only going to use enough of it to give us the idea of the pixelation. Now I didn't use the very small one that I had there because the pixels were too big, so I went back to the one previously with the slightly smaller pixels. But it worked nicely. It's just about finding the right balance. It depends on your canvas size and the resolution you're at and so on and so forth. But you can easily add in noise and just, keep tweaking it until you find the right, kind of size that's good for you. For me now, I just need to add in some greys over the back to give myself that kind of interesting background that I kind of talked about earlier with things that were slightly in focus and out of focus that may kind of be there, that's just a bit different to just some kind of plain white background, that may seem a bit more illustrative, that monochromatic background. So we're going to go for something that might just seem like things in the background that are just out of focus. For me, I feel that's just a bit more exciting and a bit more realistic photographic wise. So, and it adds a bit more depth to the image as well. We're at the point now where we're just really adding those kind of final touches, but you can see that by adding the grey over the top, it's drawing in the pixelation, and the noise and everything else, and it's really, it's really coming together as an aged image. And by adding that on top over the sheriff as well, where it's really drawing in the whole thing. We can see by adding on top the final image, the beginning image there, the first image that we were provided by our client. We can see the two images together, and we can really start to make that comparison and say, yeah, these two images are kind of almost the same. So what I'm doing here is I've just added a new layer, and I'm just saying, right, here they are, and let's just make these few final tweaks with the areas on, so I can just say, right, I just want a bit of a lighter area here, a bit of a lighter area there, just so these look exactly, kind of try to mirror them a little closer. And that looks a bit nicer, just so I have a bit of a light spot here, a bit of a light spot there, just to mirror the original image a bit closer. And it's more so on the clothing, but yeah, just on the jawline as well. That really works. Whoops. Turned off a wrong layer there somewhere. Or did I? There we go. Looks a bit weird, but there's something nice about it too. There we go. It's always nice to experiment while you work. Or just have layers randomly turn off on you while you're flicking through your history. I always find that's random when that happens. And it does happen. Comment below if that's happened to you as well before. I don't know why. It does happen to me. That sometimes my layers just turn off on me. That's what happens when you beta test for Photoshop. This isn't the beta test version though. That's installed on this machine, but I keep it separate. I do beta test for a lot of different software companies, which causes a lot of havoc on my computers. I beta test for software and hardware companies, and yeah, you won't believe the amount of driver and software issues that I end up having on various computers that I use. Lots and lots and lots of fun. Anyway, we're near the end now, so we've only 10 minutes to go. Let's crack on. Thanks for sticking with me. It really, really does mean a lot. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to click the bell notification button, and obviously more videos to come. I don't normally put videos this long, but this was a lot of fun to work on. And if you are watching this, it's one of those rare things to do. Actually redrawing a portrait of historical value. Normally they're either just retouched, or people draw portraits of people from a good reference image. So normally when you draw something and you try and keep it accurate from a really bad reference image like this, it's a strange one. But hopefully you guys have learned something. Hopefully you can teach me something in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I've just got a bit of a scratchy brush now that just lays down a bit of kind of rough scattering gibberish, noisy stuff. This isn't my brush, this is just a randomly downloaded one. But there are many out there that are just kind of garbage brushes that are just supposed to be scratches and noise and stuff like that. So I've just played with the settings a bit just to randomize it. And yeah. And there's a lot of them in Photoshop that are a bit weird looking, and I think if you just randomize the settings, play with the scattering settings, and then they'll be good enough. And you can just create a new layer and just put a bit of and there it is. I've just made it even bigger, and all I can do is just put a few more marks on here and there, and I can do it in black, and then I can do it on another layer in white as well, just to make it look like some bits of dirt have been put on, and some bits of dirt have actually taken bits of the print off as well. So overall, we've got bits of the photo bleached out. We've got noise and grain added into the photo, and we've got dirt added on as well. So that is pretty much all of the kind of aging process that we need. That's all of the aging process that all of the other photos from the period have. Some of them have harsher bleaching, harsher whiting out. Some of them have no grain, some of them do, but some of them have very little of this kind of dirty spattering kind of effect, and some of them are absolutely riddled with it from head to toe, so much that it blocks out vital detail, and it's annoying. It really depends how far you want to take each one of those effects, but it's the same with having like a skin texture. Some of them you can see no skin texture whatsoever, but I just think because we're illustrating this rather than kind of restoring a photograph, I just think it's better to have a skin texture to make it look more like a photograph. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if you like this. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. I would like to hear more from you guys. I would like to know if you've ever done anything like this. And I would like to know whether you've entered the competition from the last video. Let me know if you think this looks like the sheriff in the original photograph. Let me know if you think this looks enough like a photograph. I shall see you all next time. Good luck in the competition. See you all later.